Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at 1997 Ultra Football. Now, the reason I'm looking at just one set in this video is because this is a pretty crazy set. It's notorious for how many inserts it has, so there's a lot that I'm going to go through. I'm going to move as quickly as I can. I'm not going to bog down, but I am going to try to cover everything in this in as reasonable amount of time as possible. So, sorry that it's so big, but there's a lot to talk about here. Ultra, over the years, had a difficult time really figuring out what it was. Fleer had been kind of experimenting as it went along. It started off with a really failed attempt, and then they got it right. And then as the 90s changed, they had to change the brand, and they had a tough time. And so in 1996, they kind of threw their cards up in the air and figured out what would work. And by 1997, or 96, 97, when they initially got this going, but definitely by 1997 with the football set, they had finally figured out a way to make cards in a way that was ultra, but was also 90s. And this model would end up being what they would use for the rest of the duration until Fleer went out of business. They continued to rely on some of what they had done in 96, where they had a thick card stock and they had a full bleed card with an elegant name down at the bottom and a little logo, but the logo was now open and fresh and kind of vibrant, and the name, instead of being like a box or something really stuck on there, it was kind of receding off into space. It was dynamic, it was kind of flowery in a way, and it was a silver holofoil, so it had a lot of excitement to it. And the card images were much better selected for a full bleed card, and that's kind of the biggest advantage that they had with the set, was they actually took the time to get really good images. On the card backs, they went with a pretty simplistic card design. But there's a bit of confusion with these card backs because there are three different colors they come in. Now, the Beckett says that there's kind of a parallel that goes on. I don't believe so. I've never run into that, so I'm convinced that there is no parallel to this. There are just three different ways the card back comes. In Series 1 only, for the first 100 cards, it has a gold card back. And then from that point on, through the rest of Series 1 and through all of Series 2, they have either a blue or a green card back. Blue for NFC, green for AFC. And this includes the rookies. The rookies also have that going on. There are no subsets in this card set. There are parallels to get to in a second, but there are no subsets. So that is continuous through the whole run. The only exceptions to that are the 4 checklists, because those are in the tradition of Ultra checklists. They're images of players with a player image on the front and on the back, different on each card. In fact, there are 4 of them, 2 in Series 1, 2 in Series 2. Series 1 has Rodney Hampton and John Elway. Series 2 has Larry Centers and basically Marcus Allen getting tackled by a bunch of San Diego Chargers. So those are the only exceptions. Otherwise, all the cards are player cards. And Series 1 has rookies that are still in their college uniforms. Otherwise, everything is NFL players. So let's look at these parallels that I referred to. The parallels are basically a base card with silver foil, a gold card with obviously gold foil instead of silver, and then there's platinum. And on the card backs, the gold has a G number and the platinum has a P number. But you'll notice that the gold and the platinum have a different image from the base card. So the base card has one image, and then there is a different image for both of the parallels, but the parallels share the same image. So basically every card has 2 different images that it can have, a regular card or all parallels. This is for the entire set except the checklists and the rookies in Series 1 that I mentioned that are in their college uniforms. Fortunately for us, they did use the college logos. Unfortunately for this particular thing they were doing with the parallels, they actually only used one image. They didn't bother to get a second image for these players, which, I mean, that's fine, but it does mean that for the Series 1 rookies, the ones in their college uniforms, all 3 images are the same. Now in Series 2, these same rookies, as well as all the rest of the rookies they were going to have, they all showed up in their NFL uniforms. And for those, they do have the parallel with the second image. There is another parallel that exists, and this is a special thing that Fleer Skybox did. So for 1997, Fleer and Skybox had joined together, and for both their Ultra set and for their Skybox set, they did a deal with Reebok. And this is 15 cards in each set, so we're just going to talk about Ultra here. There are 15 cards, And the cards, which are scattered out throughout the set, they are identical to the regular card. So there's no difference to the card. Card number, everything's the same. Except for the Reebok parallels. They have a Reebok symbol up in the corner, and then they have a black bar down at the bottom with the Reebok URL down in it. And that comes in one of 5 different colors. So the base Reebok card, the text is in bronze, and then silver's the next rarest, and then you have gold, and then you have red, and then green finishes it all up. Now, the one thing that's a little bit tricky here is understanding the difference between bronze and gold. And a lot of people presumably think that they have a gold, but they actually have a bronze. The bronze is kind of an orangish color, whereas the gold is pretty much a tan. It's advisable, if you are going to do these, make sure that you get a hold of a gold card so that you can use that as your base of comparison, because there is a big difference between bronze and gold. And like I said, the gold is much brighter. But that is basically everything for the main set. But boy, did they have a lot of insert cards. First off, they had 3 different insert sets just for rookies. I'm not going to get into the Series 1 versus Series 2 with the exception of these rookies. So the first set that I'm going to talk about is the rookies themselves. This is just 10 cards, and this is, again, players in their college uniforms. So that's why it differentiates as Series 1. And they've kind of muddled up the background, which has darkened the whole image, so the player kind of gets lost in this card, which is too bad. It's a bunch of first-round players, pretty much, and there's not much to it, except it comes with a parallel. And in the parallel, all the silver foil gets replaced by gold foil, but more significantly, the card is embossed, which means that on the front, the image of the player is pushed out in relief. You flip the card over, and everything is recessed in correspondence. So that's the big thing about that set, and really it's the only thing cool about the set. Of the other 2 sets, you have all rookie team, and this is shaped kind of like playing cards. Basically, it's big rounded corners, and it's intended to be kind of like a plaque. It has sort of a wood grain pattern around the outside. It has some screw holes, and then in the inside, it has kind of a sparkly gold quality in the background. The player kind of gets lost in this, which is too bad, but it's a great card. It's a really interesting dynamic card that holds up really well. So even though you can't see the player, that's fine. And the card back is, basically kind of the same theme. Then you have first rounders, and first rounders, like with the previous one, these are Series 2, so they're players in their regular uniforms, their NFL uniforms, and this is an extremely bright and dynamic card. This is something that fits more in 1994 than it does in 1997. It's a player picture in front of kind of a field-like theme, a big green theme in the back, and kind of some foil coloring in the words, and that's about it. It's a bold, bright, brassy card, and the player shows up really well. The player looks really good in this card. There's not much really of interest, but the card looks great. So it's fun. But both of those rookie sets do look really cool. Then we have Blitzkrieg. And Blitzkrieg is a card that is, again, it has a parallel, and the parallel makes it a lot better. The base card has big colorful foil text, says Blitzkrieg on the side. It has a player image with kind of a halo of echoes of that same image around the player's head. And it's there. There's a card back, which looks like, an Ultra card back. There's not really much to it. But the parallel to the Blitzkrieg, it is first off die cut, and the die cut is kind of around the text Blitzkrieg, so it's kind of an expansion out from that. But the big thing about this card is the whole card has a foil background, a kind of a striated foil, and it makes a really dynamic card that's really neat. So this is another one of those cases where this really is about the parallel. Then there is the Comeback Kids insert set, which is basically about players who really shine right at the end of the game. And this is a full die cut set, and it's a really energetic die cutting. It's an overdone die cut. It actually doesn't sit well in whatever you put it in. You can't really figure out where the true edges are. It's a neat idea, but it was not designed by card collectors. It was designed by some person sitting in front of a computer. I'm not complaining about it. It's just, it does become a little bit, if you're obsessive compulsive, the card can be annoying. The edge of the card is designed kind of like an old treasure map or an old wanted poster where it's been singed on the outside. That's the concept that they have. And the card within is kind of a gold treatment, And it's a fun card. But what I find really interesting is if you flip the card over, the card back actually looks like a card back should exist for this card. It's one of the few cases where it seems like the card itself, how they created the card, defined how the card back would be. And while it's not a very interesting card back, it fits perfectly with it. So I have a lot of respect for this card. Then we have Specialist, and Specialist is all about the parallel. The whole card design, it doesn't really make sense in its base form. So the design for this is, it's kind of like a file folder, and it has a tab on one side with the player name, and then it has like this paperclip theme where it's got a picture kind of clipped onto it, and then on the back there are some notes that are clipped onto it. That's kind of the theme. But the parallel, which is called Ultra Specialists, they have some holofoil on it, but the big thing is that this now turns into a folded card. And that means that when you open it up, now the file folder actually opens up to an image inside of the player, which is a really neat thing they did. It doesn't necessarily look good, but it is a really neat concept that they made, and it makes the card almost like a miniature something, who knows what, but it does make it one of the more interesting and more cool cards of basically the whole 90s. Just the idea that they did this. I wish they'd done more ideas like this, but the fact that they got one of these ideas out here. Then we got a bunch of kind of run-of-the-mill inserts, and these next four really aren't that interesting. First is Rising Stars, and this is kind of a card where they put a bunch of stuff in. They made some colors kind of strong, put a lot of darkness in here, kind of blended the whole card together, and kind of lost it. It's kind of, it's there. Then we have Main Event, and Main Event is kind of, it uses some kind of holofoil-like qualities around the outside, and then on the inside they have a texture pattern of kind of like a canvas. This is a card that has some interesting things to discover about it. It's not a good card design because there's so much going on that you don't get the ability to really appreciate the things that they took care in making. But if you take the time to look at it, you'll notice that it is actually kind of cool in certain ways, but the busyness of the card kind of overpowers it. Then they have Play of the Game, and Play of the Game is kind of a cross between 94 and 96. It's a really nice looking card. It's not all that interesting, but it looks really beautiful, and so it's one of the best card inserts of this entire set. I love the card. I wish I knew why I love the card. I wish there was something I could pin down and go, yeah, that's the reason. But they did succeed in making an interesting card. Then there's Sunday School, and Sunday School is, it's okay. The foil play that they put on it, it's okay. What I do like about this set is with the black background, it has some really rich colors that they enunciated the player with. So in that way, the card actually looks pretty decent. It's not that interesting. Again, for a lot of these cards, I feel like there was a deadline and whoever was designing it just kind of ran out of time and cranked some stuff out. And this is one of those where it's got a lot of potential. It didn't quite hit there. It may look good on an individual basis, but I've been living with these cards for over 20 years and I've never really been able to get into the groove. But it is a lot better than Talent Show, which is the next one, which it's a foil card with some purple and some green, and it just kind of, this is a disappointment of a card. This is one where I've definitely been frustrated by these cards over the years. But the last two inserts that they did more than make up for all of this. These are the two really difficult ones to get, and Starring Role is the first one. This is an acetate card. It's the only acetate card that they did in this set, and the acetate, the color of the plastic, looks really good. And then they have a big sparkly star right in the middle, which makes it really enlivens the whole card and makes it really cool. The sparkliness actually has a texture to it, so I don't know if it's delicate. I've never really tried to tax these things, but it gives a feel to it that is both kind of cool and a little intimidating, because basically it's like sandpaper, so you got to be a little careful with these. Then you close out with Ultra Stars, and this is a card that has it kind of sneaks up on you. At first it looks like just a foil card with kind of an explosion of a firework in the background, but then as you turn it, you'll notice there's a hollow foil pattern in it that comes out and is really bright and vibrant. It's not a good card design, but it's an interesting card design. It's fun to kind of experience. So that's what's interesting about this card. But basically that big mess was 1997. Fortunately, the main set was pretty basic. The inserts, though, boy, they really got carried away with it. But it was a lot of fun to go through all of this. In 98, 99, and on, they would continue with kind of themes of this where they would take this and better refine it and create a better constructed set. And at least for the next 2 years, kind of almost better card designs, not quite. They would find new ways to make it kind of fun and interesting, but this was the model. They finally figured out how to make it work, and it really did. So I'll be looking at the other sets down the road. Be sure to check out for those videos as they come up. And if you haven't subscribed already, do so. But thank you very much for watching.